You know, we call this place the phony witness, Mr. Weston. Well, they say that anyone who ever wants a witness can always find one here. But it's only a story, of course. What did you think of this morning's little scene, then? They're like a class of school kids. Nobody wants to take the blame.
Drasko, the whole setup takes a lot of getting used to. All right, the punishment should fit the crime. But the point is that in England, in a situation like this, the question of a crime wouldn't arise at all, unless you could prove they were blind drunk or plotting sabotage.
Well, those two train drivers got put away and they weren't saboteurs.
Which train drivers?
There was a crash here back in about 1974. 170 people killed. Same judge.
What did they get?
The same as this lot can expect. 20 years.
20 years? It's barbaric.
That makes 42 days and about 20 hours for each victim.
That's an appalling equation.
Listen, would you like me to introduce you to the public prosecutor? You know you're part of his team.
Later.
We've got the big white chief from the Federal Board of Aviation this morning. Experts. They'll make sure the blame sticks where it causes the least damage, you see.
Would it therefore be true to say, comrade, that there is a serious staff shortage problem in Zagreb?
Well, as you can see from our report, we certainly do have manning problems. We're especially short of very experienced controllers.
Do you personally feel that the present training given to controllers is adequate?
We do have a problem keeping up standards. A few years ago, the training school couldn't cope, but it's been expanded now. We tried to run refresher courses, but well, these have had to be scrapped for financial reasons.
You must be aware, comrade, that before the events of last September, several controllers have been removed from Zagreb Center for incompetence.
Yes, it's true. We do have a recurrent problem, training up controllers who don't reach the required standards. But having said that, in the annual report, Zagreb has always received very good marks for quality of work.
Comrade Judge, I'd like to ask a question. Why hasn't anything been done to sort out the radar? It's still on test after lying there for 2 years, and there are no rules worked out governing its use.
Well, I can't personally understand why this question hasn't been sorted out. I know there have been problems, delays in the supply of equipment, and, as you say, problems sorting out the rules. But unfortunately, there's only one man working in the regulations department. Well, I only rubber stamp the rules. I blame myself for not going into them more deeply. I would just like to make the point that I'm fairly new at this job, and I can't be expected to be familiar with every aspect yet.
Your Commission of Inquiry clearly states that had existing rules not been broken or ignored, the disaster would not have taken place. But you yourself have just told us that the situation regarding these rules was really chaotic. What
Comrade,
can you tell us?
In the last 10 years, air traffic has increased by 85%. Now, just imagine the strain that this has imposed on air traffic controllers all over the world. If you like, we're the Cinderellas of the aviation world. We're always being left behind.
Can you be specific as to the number of controllers that Zagreb is currently lacking?
I would say 30 to 40 extra men. See, we have a problem with finance. Every year we put in an air budget for government approval, and every year they cut it by 30%.
There's an advertisement here for new recruits. Amongst other perks, it promises that decent housing goes with the job. What do you say, comrade? That the housing allocated to Gradimir Tasic was of a kind that ensures a contented background? And so vital, I would have thought, to a controller's attitude to his work.
The housing problem for controllers drafted here from Belgrade does need looking into. I know there's a tendency for them to want to return to Belgrade. It's causing us headaches, I admit. It was irresponsible of us to put that bit about housing into the advertisement. It can't be carried out.
Let's hope this one's got a stronger instinct for self-preservation.
Comrade, Gradimir Tasic has stated in his evidence that had the Trident crew been paying closer attention to the traffic situation rather than to a crossword, the disaster may have been avoided. As an aviation expert, what is your reaction to this?
British Airways do have a written rule which requires crews to keep a lookout for other planes. But in this case, it's been proved that the DC-9 struck from underneath. The sky was clear, but the Trident crew would have had no warning of disaster. In my opinion, the point is entirely invalid. I would like to remind the court that the Commission of Inquiry clearly dismissed the notion that any action on the part of any pilot had a bearing on this accident.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I also feel that it's important that that goes on the record again. The witness stated that the Commission of Inquiry dismissed the idea that pilot error had any bearing on this accident.
All the traffic from Asia, the Middle East, and Australia flies over Zagreb, and air equipment is not adequate. It often happens that radio frequencies just don't work, and when that happens, it makes life very, very difficult.
The witness states that all the air traffic from Asia, from the Middle East, and
What's
from
the point of improving their
flies
equipment
over Zagreb.
if they haven't got enough staff to man what they've already got?
Whose side are you on?
But the equipment at Zagreb
We
is
seem
not
to have caught
adequate
Watergate
to
fever.
large volume of traffic.
Those guys need their brains tested. Washing their dirty linen in public. Why drag in all these side issues?
Radio frequencies are out of action.
Do you fancy a drink?
When that happens, it is
No,
very
thanks.
difficult for the air traffic
I've got a speech to write.
with such a large volume of traffic.
You're going to make a speech? Well, you've got the right. You're one of the prosecution team. Do you want any help?
No, thanks. I think I'll handle this one on my own.
This is a speech for the defense. What are you trying to do? Okay, I know they haven't got a hope in hell of getting off, but this is dangerous stuff, Richard. You're a co-prosecutor.
Listen, Drasko, I'm no bleeding heart liberal. I'm as anxious as you all were to nail whoever was to blame. But no one, with one iota of intelligence, could let those men sweat it out in jail without kicking up one hell of a fuss. Now, you heard what their boss said yesterday. Oh, that did it for me. Are you trying to tell me that...
Richard, if you make this speech, you'll make a fool of yourself. You'll make a fool of me as your advisor in front of a judge that I've got to face over and over again. This year, next year. If you can't think of yourself, think of me. I could lose a lot of friends, possibly a living even. And maybe that doesn't mean much to you. Anyway, why all this sudden concern? For Tasic and Co., I just don't get it.
What do you think the air traffic controllers in London, in Timbuktu, are saying when they read about this trial? I'll tell you what they're saying. They're saying, there, but for the grace of God, go I. Every time an air traffic controller comes on duty, he knows that a mid-air collision or a near miss for which he can be held responsible is a distinct possibility. If he starts looking at those dots in front of him and on his screen as so many hundred human beings, he'd go out of his mind. Can't you see the effect of this?
Oh, come on. What are you trying to tell me? That those guys are crazy? They're far too clever at shifting the blame.
Yes, to save their own skins. They're liable to get 20 years. Now, if you or I were in their shoes, well, who knows? The whole point is they should never have been put on the spot where they had to lie at all. Yes, I know. The public needs a scapegoat. The media thinks it's its duty to offer up a selection. But it does not follow that the courts have to pander to this witch hunt.
Richard, hold on. Now you forget one thing. Under the Yugoslav Penal Code, the public prosecutor had no choice but to bring them to trial. I've told you that.
If the law as it stands says that their action is criminal, then the law is wrong and should be changed. It won't be the first time.
Richard, with respect, you've been here 5 minutes and you want us to change our laws.
Too tired to argue. If you want to make yourself useful, I ordered some sandwiches about a week ago.
Leave it to me. Ovo je solva gospodina Vestina. Jesus sam viži kože sam naružio pred polosata. It's all fixed. What's it to you what happens to these men? She was your girlfriend, wasn't she? How do you feel when you see those men every day in court? It's 100% in your interests that those controllers are put inside. That way, the government is indirectly responsible. We can press for damages. Am I right? Of course I'm right. You've got her family to think about.
Look, I've already told you her family have given me an entirely free hand. They're not interested in money for money's sake. It won't bring her back.
What I'm trying to say is you're stepping out of line as a foreigner.
What you're trying to say, you've already made quite clear. You're worried about your own neck.
You're a co-prosecutor. How do you expect them to react to a speech for the defense? They might laugh, but somehow I don't think...
It's in place. If you don't want to help, I understand. I'll find someone who will. But I don't have much time.
I don't understand the English. Always backing the underdog. Automatically.
Come in. You can't see what I'm driving at all, can you?
I see 176 dead people, including your girlfriend. And every day in court, I see 6 men who are responsible for their safety. Did you know that every 24 hours, $1 billion worth of metal passes over here? 1 billion.
Look, just read this carefully and see if any of it penetrates.
Richard, you do understand, don't you, that all the respect that I've gained by being associated with someone like you could go out of the window?
I've got work to do. Who do you suggest I call first?
Okay. I'll be there.
Let me take the court into the mysterious electronic world in which air traffic controllers live. Now, many of us have stressful jobs, many of us carry heavy responsibilities. I ask the court to recognize that the air traffic controller's responsibility is a very special one, and that the stress which that responsibility induces is of an abnormal nature. The job of juggling airliners and making snap decisions on which hundreds of lives depend is a Herculean task. It takes a very special individual to withstand that onslaught day after day, because it is a job which very few of us could perform at all, let alone endure. I sincerely believe that, while I respect the fact that this is a criminal trial of the defendants, that the court will more properly discharge its obligations to society if it will use its powers in an imaginative and resourceful way, and not limit itself to the punishment of those who stand before it today. They, as I have endeavored to show, are themselves victim of a system. Is it not a fact that the aviation community has created a system which has grown into a monster which we have not had the time to learn how to control in the real sense. On September the 10th, Vladimir Tasic was the final link in a system that failed. And yet, if we single out an individual or individuals for blame and lock them up, the deeper underlying problem remains unresolved. And next week, another individual in the same fallacious system may make the same error with equally disastrous consequences. That there was confusion, misunderstanding, mishandling, breaches of the rules, overwork, unauthorized absenteeism, shortage of skilled staff at Zagreb Control would seem to be undisputed. But let me make myself clear, beyond any doubt, I do not ask this court to condone or overlook any blame attaching to the defendants. For what I do ask is that this be seen in perspective. One could, I suppose, draw a parallel. The temptation is irresistible. If one were to say that doctors, in prescribing the wrong drugs, were then subject to criminal prosecution, ask, I suggest, what kind of medical profession we would have tomorrow. The answer is only too painfully clear. It is no exaggeration to say that the aviation community around the world waits with bated breath for the decision of this court. All these defendants will have to live with the thought of that catastrophe for the rest of their lives. And that, together with the experience of this trial, would, I suggest, be wholly sufficient punishment in the circumstances. The real danger is that the effect of a prison sentence on these men will be disastrous for the morale of the air traffic control system throughout the world, and therefore directly affect the safety of the traveling public. The imprisonment of these defendants will be wholly counterproductive to the solution which is sought. Instead of being in the limelight today as the architect of tragedy, Zagreb could tomorrow be, by virtue of an enlightened decision of this court, a model for world civil aviation. The lives of those killed on September the 10th will not have been sacrificed in vain.
Guilt cannot be an objective concept. It is a theory, a value judgment, escaping rational analysis and scientific determination.
How's Tasic?
Oh, he'll be okay. A mild heart murmur, maybe. It's nothing serious. Richard, I'm sorry. You understood why.
If Darchik, as shift supervisor, sat working at his desk, it does not follow that he was consciously neglecting his work of supervising the control room. The charges against the middle sector controllers, Edovich and Pelin, are found to be invalid. The work of this sector was perfectly normal. To determine Hochberger's and Tepish's guilt, it will be imperative to demonstrate that their absence caused an overburden of work for Tasic, which in turn caused a disaster. No direct causal link, however, can be established between the proven breaches of regulation by the two accused and the collision. How these men will be disciplined is up to the aviation authorities. As far as Tasic is concerned, there is only one possible conclusion in the court's eyes. Tasic accepted coordination with the middle sector and gave permission for the DC-9 to climb. The resulting mid-air collision was caused by his negligence. The court has examined possible extenuating circumstances. And Tasic had just received his transfer back to Belgrade, and there are particular problems relating to controllers who are transferred to Zagreb from Belgrade. There are problems of housing, separation from their families. Their minds are bound to wander back and forth to their hometowns. And Tasic was such a case, and this may well have contributed to his state of mind on the day of the crash. The fact that the radar was on test and unreliable made his work that much harder. And yet, the court cannot accept that he was overworked. He made only one non-urgent call to Belgrade, which was, strictly speaking, the job of an assistant. Air traffic controllers must be constantly vigilant. They must be aware of the terrible cost of one slip. And their sense of responsibility is heightened by the knowledge that if they deviate from the rules, the law will take stern measures with them. The accused will be upstanding. It is the verdict of this court that the defendants Darchik, Tepish, Hochberger, Edovich and Pelin be set free. Defendant Tasic is hereby sentenced to a term of 7 years imprisonment. The accused has been in custody since September the 10th last, and this has been taken into consideration in assessing his sentence. The court will disperse.
Five out of 6, Richard. You must be pleased. Can I give you a lift to the hotel?
We'd just like to say thank you.
Yes, it's your speech. It tipped the balance. It helped us get us all off. We've got a lot to thank you for.
You helped us win the fight. Please, come and have a drink with us. It's the least we can do.
Tasic is on his way back to jail, with every scrap of blame for this disaster pinned squarely on his shoulders. Till we get them to see reason, get him out. Well, the fight is only just starting.
He'll appeal, won't he?
No doubt he will. And I'm sure you haven't forgotten that under your laws, the prosecutor can also appeal against your acquittal. So all in all, your exuberance, if I may say so, is a little premature. You'll excuse me.
Mr. Weston, what do you think the consequences of a trial like this are likely to be?
Well, as you know, I represent a bereaved family. And when I get back home and they say to me, well, what happened to Zagreb? And I tell them, this chap got locked up for so many years. It's not going to do them or anybody else any good. But if I could have said to them, there's going to be an official investigation into the whole business of air traffic control with an aim of improving it, resulting in the greatest safety for everyone who flies. Well, then they might say, thank goodness she didn't die in vain. Good day.
Thank you.
Our flight to London will take 2 hours 15 minutes and we'll be flying at a height of 31,000 feet. Our route will take us over Munich and Brussels before landing at London Heathrow at 18:55 local time.
Richard Weston continued to campaign on Tasic's behalf, organising an international air traffic controllers petition to President Tito. On November 29, 1978, when Tasic had served 26 months in jail, he was released. Meanwhile, Yugoslavia quietly set to work to reform and reorganise the air traffic control system at Zagreb. A system they had always maintained was in no way responsible for the tragedy.